Hey guys, tonight we're diving into another immersive escape on ancient secrets and soothing sounds. Your cozy corner on the internet, where dusty history gets a lush candlelit makeover. Picture this. The year is 1885. London is still cloaked in a fog that smells suspiciously like burning coal and questionable morals. Horse-drawn carriages clatter over cobblestone streets, slick with rain. Gas lamps flicker, casting ghostly halos on polished shop windows. Meanwhile, inside a grand townhouse, soft velvet drapes, gilded mirrors, and the faint scent of lavender soap are all part of the daily backdrop. But tonight's story isn't about the lady of the house gliding down her marble staircase in silk and diamonds. Nope, we're following someone far more intriguing, her dressing maid, the quiet mastermind who ensures that those glorious ball gowns look perfect, who knows exactly how tight a corset can be pulled before I feel faint turns into I've passed out cold. Imagine waking up before dawn to lug boiling water upstairs for someone else's bath, your hands already chapped from scrubbing lace collars. By evening, you're on your knees, tightening a waist until it's a literal breath away from disaster. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive the first day. Hey, I wouldn't either. I'd be fired after complaining once about my sore back. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It tells me these candlelit trips back in time are worth continuing. Oh, and drop me a comment with your city and what time it is right now. I love seeing who's unwinding with me from across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are now lying on a narrow straw mattress in a cramped attic room, the kind of space that's barely big enough for your small trunk of clothes and a single rickety chair. The air is heavy with last night's ashes from countless chimney fires that snake their way up through the walls of this old London townhouse. It's still dark, so dark that you can't even make out your own hands. But somewhere far below, you hear it. Dong. The first solemn toll of the hall clock cuts through the silence. Its sound rises up the stairwell like a cold finger tapping your shoulder. You blink, inhale the chill that seems sharper in your tiny garret, and let out a long sigh that's almost a silent pep talk. Because ready or not, your day has begun. Already, your mind spins into motion. It's like you've got a chalkboard in your head, and you're scribbling down every task before the dawn has even properly arrived. Where should you light the first fire? How many kettles of water will you need to heat? What time is Madam's carriage coming for her? Fitting at Madam Worth's today was at 2:30 or 2:45. You can't afford to get that wrong. It's funny, in a grim sort of way, how you've trained yourself to organize your entire life around someone else's comfort. You imagine Madam still wrapped in embroidered coverlets, soft breath rising and falling, absolutely unaware of the whirlwind that's about to start below her bedroom floorboards. She probably dreams of garden parties or velvet opera seats. Meanwhile, your reality is a checklist that starts with coal dust under your fingernails and ends, if you're lucky, sometime past midnight, with your feet throbbing like little hot bricks. You stay there for just a moment longer, letting your eyes adjust. It's peaceful in a cruel sense, because it's the only peace you'll get today. There's a faint scent of paraffin from the lamp you forgot to snuff completely last night, mingling with the lingering lavender starch on your uniform's collar. You breathe it all in. Somehow that jumble of smells is home now. Then you sit up, feeling your bones protest. They're still weary from yesterday's endless rounds, hauling bath water, chasing down a loose thread on Madame's promenade dress that she claimed would be the death of her reputation, and racing up 3 flights of stairs for the fan she left in the drawing room. The aches are old friends by now, like the little groan your knees make. Your bare feet hit the freezing floorboards, and you wince. There's no thick rug up here like Madame has. You wiggle your toes, trying to chase off the sting. Another breath in, and then you roll your shoulders back, because sulking won't make the day any shorter. Downstairs, you can already picture it. The kitchen maid is probably tiptoeing around the scullery, coaxing the massive range to life. You know the butler is likely in the breakfast room by now, winding the bracket clocks and making little pencil marks in his precise logbook. He treats it like the Bible of the house. Time in this household is a living beast, tamed by his daily rituals, and if you're even a few minutes off, the whole grand illusion of effortless gentility might crack. So your brain keeps ticking. After the fires, you'll need to prep the hot water, then Madame's tea tray, then the delicate dance of corsets and laces and pins. But right now, in these fragile pre-dawn minutes, it's still just planning, still safe. Sometimes, though you'd never admit this aloud, you almost relish these quiet calculations. It's a puzzle you've become shockingly good at. What needs doing first to keep the rest from collapsing? Which footman to bribe with a quick smile to help carry extra buckets? When to sneak into the linen press so you don't catch the housekeeper's eagle glare? This is your little empire of efficiency, even if it's built on someone else's comfort. Of course, it doesn't stop the occasional wistful thought. What if you could lie in until the sun was well up, someone else bustling to draw your bath, bringing in a tray with delicate porcelain and a sugar biscuit perched like a tiny crown on the saucer? What if you could simply ring a bell when you needed your stockings adjusted, instead of practically living on your knees adjusting someone else's? You chuckle softly at the thought. It's a dangerous sort of daydream because it tastes too sweet. So you push it away. You are a dressing maid after all. Your worth is measured by how invisibly, how flawlessly you can keep the day's machinery turning. The best compliment is no compliment at all, just the absence of a complaint. With that final mental nudge, you set your shoulders, press your palms into your stiff straw mattress to stand, and prepare to step into the cold corridor. Your day hasn't truly started yet, not until you light that first spark in Madame's grate. But in these precious heartbeats before your life becomes a flurry of skirts and soapy water, you give yourself a tiny nod in the dark. Because if anyone truly ran this house from dawn to midnight, it wasn't the lady gliding down the staircase in silk. It was you, tired feet, cracked hands, racing mind and all. And so the silent drum of your to-do list quickens. Your heart matches its pace. And with that, you slip into the dim hallway, ready to coax this old house awake. You step carefully over the creaky floorboards of your little attic room, feeling around for the small basin on your washstand. Your breath comes out in visible puffs like tiny ghosts of all the sighs you'll let out today. You scoop up the water, and oh sweet mercy, it's icy enough to bite. You splash it over your face anyway. There's a sharp gasp you can't suppress, a little jolt that races down your spine. Congratulations, you're officially awake. If the first strike of the clock was the polite invitation, this freezing wash is the rude shove. You glance into the cracked mirror hanging crooked on the wall. There you are, pink cheeks from the cold, hair pinned up hastily last night, now sprouting little rebellions at your temples. You lean in closer, any smudges under your eyes from too little sleep. Well, yes, but that's standard. You give yourself a lopsided grin. Good morning, you poor thing. Let's try not to get fired today. Next comes the ritual of dressing yourself, a ceremony far less elegant than the one you'll later perform for Madame. You pull on your plain linen chemise, shivering as the cool fabric settles against your damp skin. Then it's the long brown stockings, rolled carefully up each leg and tied off with humble garters that have seen better days. You flex your toes inside them, grateful at least for this thin layer between you and the merciless chill of the floors. Now for the petticoat, stiff with repeated starchings. Then your black wool dress. It's a severe cut, tight in the bodice, long in the sleeves, designed less to flatter and more to declare. I am respectable, trustworthy, and absolutely not the sort of girl who might run off with the stable boy, even if between us you might daydream otherwise on especially boring afternoons. Over that goes the spotless white apron. You knot it firmly at your waist, then tie on the small cap that sits snugly over your pinned-up hair. This little cap is almost like a badge of office. It whispers to the world that you belong to the hidden army of women who make sure the wealthy can live in oblivious luxury. You run your hands down your skirt, smoothing imaginary wrinkles, then stand back to inspect the whole effect in your mirror. Is your collar straight? Any stray lint? You pick off a tiny bit of fluff and give yourself one last stern nod. Acceptable. As you move, the thick fabric of your dress swishes slightly around your legs, a faint sound that will follow you all day through staircases and corridors, like the hush of distant waves. It's oddly comforting. Your mind is already sprinting ahead. You tick off mental notes at a dizzying pace. Don't forget the new lavender sachets for Madame's drawer, she said. The last batch smelled too rustic. Check her gloves after breakfast. Last night she mentioned a stain that looked suspiciously like gravy. And oh Lord, did you bring up the camphor blocks from the storage room last night to protect her furs? As you bend to lace your sturdy boots, you whisper a soft little chant of reminders under your breath. It's half prayer, half pep talk, because a dressing maid's greatest terror is overlooking some detail, so small it only becomes catastrophic when Madame's already halfway down the stairs. Finally, you straighten, give your cap a last pat, and exhale a slow breath. The transformation is complete. You've become the neat, unremarkable silhouette that's expected of you. No bright colors, no frills that might compete with Madame's splendor, just black, white, and the almost invisible hum of your readiness to serve. Now comes the delicate part, leaving your little attic haven without disturbing the other maids who might still be snatching a few last moments of sleep. You lift your skirts slightly to avoid tripping on the narrow stair, each step soft as a whisper. There's a sort of camaraderie here, unspoken but deeply felt. Everyone knows everyone else's burden, and sometimes the greatest kindness is simply not waking them before their own hour of duty. On the tiny landing outside your room hangs a brass hook holding your cleaning basket, bristling brushes, bits of rag, a battered little bottle of lavender oil. That's your secret finishing touch. You sling the handle over your arm, balancing it against your hip. It feels reassuring, almost like a knight gripping a sword, though your battles today will be with dust, stains, and Madame's fluctuating moods. Before you descend, you pause just for a heartbeat by the tiny dormer window. The sky beyond is still an indigo bruise, but the first pale streaks of dawn are creeping in, brushing the rooftops with hesitant light. For a split second, it's beautiful, a silent promise that despite everything aches, cold, endless demands, the world is still capable of new beginnings. And with that tiny flicker of comfort tucked inside you like a warm coal, you start down the narrow stairs. Your day has truly begun, and from here on, it's all a careful choreography of bows, curtsies, discreet questions, and quick hands. Still, there's a certain pride that pulses quietly beneath your plain uniform, because while your lady may never truly grasp it, you know exactly how many small miracles it takes to make her life look effortless. And today, you're ready to perform every last one. Your feet find the rhythm of the steps almost automatically now, muscle memory guiding you down the cramped, winding servant staircase that coils like a hidden artery through the great house. Unlike the sweeping front staircase with its thick carpet runner and polished mahogany banisters, this passage is purely functional, narrow, scuffed by countless shoes, smelling faintly of soap, coal dust, and old wood. You keep your head slightly bowed as you descend. It's not just habit, it's also practical. Low beams and an ill-placed brass coat hook have tried to catch your scalp before. As you pass the tiny landing, halfway down, you see a faint glow seeping out from under the door to one of the footman's attic rooms. Early risers like you, though for entirely different duties, his first task will probably be blacking the grates in the front hall, making sure not a speck of ash mars Madam's morning view. When your feet reach the final few steps, the air changes subtly. It's warmer, heavy with the mingled aromas of yeast, damp stone, and the faint tang of metal polish. You can hear the clink of crockery and the low murmur of kitchen voices. The heart of the house is already stirring. You push open the door into the back corridor, adjusting your basket against your hip. The familiar hush of activity wraps around you. A scullery maid scuttles past, carrying a stack of chipped enamel basins almost as tall as her head. You give her a sympathetic smile. Her day will be filled with scalding water and raw, cracked hands. She attempts a grin in return, but mostly looks terrified of dropping her cargo. Stepping lightly, you head toward the servant hall, an austere room lined with plain wooden benches and pegs for hats and coats. There's a massive grandfather clock here, its pendulum swaying with steady authority. You pause before it, eyes narrowing slightly. Checking the time isn't just habit, it's a small ritual of power. The butler might keep the official house ledger of time, but every maid in this building keeps her own mental tally, ensuring no one else's schedule collides disastrously with her own. Satisfied that you're exactly on pace, no need to rush, no excuse to dawdle, you continue on through a side arch that leads to the main corridor. Here you nearly collide with the underfootman, who's balancing a tray stacked with silver goblets, destined for polishing. You both mutter quick apologies, a tiny ballet of sidestepping that would be comedic if it weren't performed under the constant looming threat of reprimand. As you enter the great front hall, your footsteps instinctively soften, despite the echoing marble underfoot. The hall is cavernous, with high ceilings adorned in delicate plasterwork that looks like whipped cream frozen in time. Two enormous oil portraits glower down at you, ancestors who would no doubt clutch their pearls if they knew how many footsteps like yours scurried through their domain long before their descendants ever woke. You take in the massive main clock here, its face a regal circle of ivory and gold. It's your second checkpoint. A quick glance tells you it's still early, just past 6. Good. That means the drawing room fire will be lit in the next quarter hour. The breakfast trays will start their clatter soon after, and you have exactly the right window to slip through with your cleaning basket without getting under the butler's sharply polished shoes. As you move across the hall, your eyes meet those of Thomas, one of the young footmen who's busy setting out polished brass umbrella stands by the door. He gives you a slight conspiratorial nod. It's not romance, no time, no real privacy for that kind of indulgence, but it's camaraderie. You've covered for him when he lingered too long flirting with the upstairs maid last week, and he once discreetly warned you when Madame was in one of her legendary tempers. In a household this intricate, small alliances mean everything. Then, without a word, you each slip back into your own worlds. His involves gleaming metal and measured bows. Yours involves a mental replay of every corner you'll soon sweep, every hearth you'll tend, every piece of lace you'll check for stray threads. Your hand tightens around the handle of your basket, bristling with brushes, cloths, and that little bottle of lavender oil that serves as your secret finishing grace note. To a guest of the house, you'd appear as nothing more than a modest servant girl gliding through on quiet feet. But inside, you're already a whirling ledger of tasks and subtle timings. And so, with a small breath, a silent all right, here we go, you turn toward the servants' corridor again. The real work hasn't even started yet, but in this brief crossing of the grand hall, you've reconfirmed your silent oath to keep the machinery of this house running so smoothly that Madame will never think to question what it takes. And if all goes perfectly, she'll simply believe her life unfolds by magic. A magic that just so happens to walk around on two legs, wearing a plain cap and carrying a basket full of humble tools. You slip through the discreet door that leads to Madame's private suite, quiet as a cat, careful not to let the latch click shut too loudly behind you. The corridor here is warmer, though still dim, lit only by a single oil lamp on a little table that guards the turn toward her dressing room. You pause, letting your eyes adjust, ears straining. No sounds yet from beyond the bedroom door. Good, she's still sleeping. That means you have a precious window, your small secret dominion, before your lady ever opens her eyes. First, the hearth. You kneel in front of it, placing your basket at your side. The cold stone seeps instantly through your skirt, biting at your knees. With practiced hands, you open the grate, careful not to let the iron creak too much, and begin scooping out the gray remains of yesterday's fire. Ash floats up in lazy spirals, tickling your nose. You stifle a sneeze because heaven forbid you startle Madame awake with an ill-timed blast of dust. The old cinders go into your little iron bucket. Then you take your brush and give the grate a brisk scrub, knocking loose the stubborn black flakes that cling to the fireback. You've done this so many times that your hands seem to move all on their own. Scrape, brush, scoop, tap, like a private dance with soot. Next comes the careful building of today's blaze. You start with twisted wads of newspaper, folded last night for exactly this purpose by the scullery maid. Bless her diligent little heart. Then small sticks of kindling arranged like a tiny teepee. Over that, you stack a careful lattice of coal. Not too much. Madame hates when her rooms get overly warm and stuffy, but just enough to ensure it will catch and burn steadily through her morning routine. You strike a match, the flare startling in the shadowy room. The flame hisses along the paper, then licks up the kindling with greedy little snaps. You crouch close, blowing gently, eyes narrowed against the swirl of heat and tiny sparks. Soon it's alive, crackling softly, a faint orange glow beginning to bloom. And there it is, the very first comfort Madame will feel today. It might be the humblest job in the world, but there's a small secret pride that fills your chest whenever the fire takes. Because you know this warmth, this gentle flicker of safety and luxury, is entirely your doing. But you're not done yet. You stand, brushing soot from your hands, and move to the adjoining bedroom. Here, Everything is layered in hushed, expensive softness, heavy velvet drapes, embroidered coverlets, tiny porcelain figurines on every available surface. The hearth in here is much like the dressing rooms, just larger and with an ornate brass fender that you must polish every other day. You repeat the ritual, quieter now, because you're only feet from the grand canopy bed. You can just see the gentle rise and fall of Madame's silhouette under a mountain of linens. She's oblivious to the chill you're warding off, oblivious to the smear of ash on your wrist. By the time she stirs, the room will be warm enough that she might never guess it was ever otherwise. With the second fire lit, you take a moment to stand, your hands close to the new flames. The heat sinks into your skin, drawing out some of the sting of the early hour. For a few stolen seconds, you allow yourself to simply enjoy it. The hush of the room, the gentle crackle, the almost invisible scent of coal smoke twined with the lingering lavender sachets in Madame's wardrobe. It's a fragile piece, balanced on the tip of a very long day. Then duty nudges you on. You collect your tools, check to be sure there's no stray smear of soot on the rug. Another near-invisible disaster that could have you scolded for hours and quietly back out of the bedroom. In the corridor once more, you draw a slow breath. The first, most vital step of the morning is complete. These fires are more than just heat. They're the silent signal that the house is waking up under your careful hands. Already, you can imagine how it will unfold. Soon the footman will knock to deliver fresh coals for later. The kitchen maid will shuffle by with her own load of trays and saucepans, eyes half-lidded from sleep. The butler will make a brisk round, casting a practiced eye over every corner to ensure nothing looks amiss before the household's ruling lady emerges. And through it all, you'll glide on soft shoes from hearth to hearth, from garment to garment, pulling unseen strings that keep this delicate puppet show in flawless motion. You smile to yourself, just a ghost of amusement, because while Madame may believe her morning fires appear by simple household magic, some mysterious rite conferred by her birth, it's actually your fingers, your calloused palms, your smart little choices of kindling and draft and careful timing that make the miracle. And so with that thought, tucked like a small warm stone inside your chest, you set off back down the corridor. Time to fetch the hot water. The next stage of this private symphony is about to begin, and you, dear unseen conductor, mustn't miss a single cue. You make your way down the back corridor once more, skirts brushing against the paneled walls, basket balanced neatly on your hip. The scent of burning coal still clings to you, but now it mingles with something sharper, metal and damp stone, as you descend the broader servant staircase that leads to the kitchen. Down here, the world shifts. It's bustling, noisy, alive. A thin fog of steam hangs in the air, rolling off enormous blackened stoves and bubbling pots. Someone's chopping onions at breakneck speed, the knife thunk-thunk-thunking against a scarred wooden board. The scullery girl is elbow-deep in greasy water, sleeves already soaked despite her best efforts. Over it all wafts the comforting, hearty smell of fresh bread starting to bake, which makes your stomach let out a small, traitorous growl. You nod a quick greeting to the cook, who barely glances up. She's too busy wrestling with a ledger, likely calculating how many pies she can stretch out of last week's leftover gain. Then you cross to the massive hearth at the far end, where 3 hulking iron kettles sit squat over glowing embers. Each is already filled with water, fat bubbles clinging to the bottom as they gather the will to rise. The kitchen maid hurries over, red-cheeked from heat and effort. "Here, let me shift these up closer to the flame for you," she says, grabbing the handle of the heaviest kettle with a practiced, muscle-corded grip. Together, you adjust them on the iron dogs so they'll boil faster. While you wait, you lean a hip against the cool stone wall and allow yourself a microsecond of rest. But your mind never stops. You're already calculating how many trips will it take to get enough hot water upstairs? How much can you pour into the bedroom's basin versus the smaller ewer in the dressing room? Should you bring up one of the smaller copper kettles later to keep by the hearth for quick hand washing? Soon enough, the first kettle lets out a low, roiling hiss. Steam rises in earnest, curling around your face. You wrap a thick rag around the handle. It's hot enough to sear flesh in an instant, and lift, your arms strain. Even after months of this, the weight is considerable. The water sloshes inside with the sinister enthusiasm of a living thing determined to scald your wrists. Step by careful step, you maneuver through the kitchen, out into the corridor, and start the slow climb. You can't rush. Spill even a little on Madam's Persian rugs, and your day will turn from tedious to catastrophic in the blink of an eye. By the time you reach the first floor again, your muscles burn. You're grateful for it. In a strange way, it's a tangible reminder of your purpose here. You pause outside the dressing room, set the kettle on the floor, flex your fingers to ease the sting, then carry it inside and pour a generous amount into the porcelain washstand basin. A swirl of steam unfurls, carrying with it a faint tang of iron from the kettle itself. You repeat this process 3 more times. Downstairs, upstairs, pouring with utmost care, each trip carving a little more soreness into your shoulders and back. By the end, your breath comes in shallow gulps. Your apron is slightly damp where stray drops caught it, and the wash basin and small portable hip bath are both half filled with invitingly warm water. Then comes the final touch. You pull out your battered old thermometer, dip it into the basin, and squint at the rising silver thread. Perfect. Not scalding, not tepid. Exactly the sort of temperature Madam will find soothing. You even swirl your hand through it, testing for any hotter pockets that might startle her delicate sensibilities. It's funny how often you hover on the brink of scorn at her demands. Who else would have an entire orchestra of kettles and weary servants ensuring the water is precisely to her liking? Yet there's also a strange satisfaction in it. You've become an expert in this quiet, ephemeral art, like a conductor ensuring every violin plays its note at the exact right moment. With the water arranged, you take a clean linen towel from the cupboard and drape it over the rack, close enough to the hearth that it will be gently warmed by the time Madam emerges. Then you tuck the thermometer away, straighten your cap, and allow yourself a moment to simply look around. The fire crackles, the water steams. The room is warming into a cozy little haven against the persistent London chill. You can almost see it now. Madam's sleepy smile as she dips her hands into the basin, her faint sigh of relief when the warmth soothes her delicate fingers. She'll never pause to think who labored up and down the stairs to make this small moment of comfort possible. And truly, that's the point. Because if she ever did, if she ever looked too closely and realized just how many blistered hands and aching backs propped up her effortless life, well, that might crack the delicate porcelain of the world you've both agreed to inhabit. So you give the basin one last swirl, adjust the little lace doily beneath the soap dish so it sits precisely straight, and step back. Your part of this private ritual is complete. The stage is set. Now, all that remains is to bring her gently into this carefully curated warmth and begin the next dance of tea trays, corsets, and whispered morning gossip that will carry you both through the first hours of the day. You slip out of the dressing room and glide down the corridor to the small butler's pantry where the tea trays are assembled each morning. There, in the subdued hum of early activity, the undermaid is already bustling about, fetching silver spoons and delicate porcelain cups from high shelves. The scent of steeping tea curls through the air, mingling with faint hints of burnt toast from the distant kitchen. You greet her with a soft morning, and she nods back, eyes rimmed with fatigue, but managing a faint grin. Together you check the tray, a fine porcelain teapot balanced in the center, flanked by a small dish with precisely 2 lemon slices, a matching sugar bowl with tiny tongs, a delicate china cup on its saucer, and Madam's absolute non-negotiable, a single crisp shortbread biscuit. Nearby, the butler has laid out the folded daily paper, freshly ironed, so not a wrinkle mars its pages. You carefully place it all on the silver tray, testing the balance with a cautious lift. Then you're off again, moving slowly down the carpeted corridor so that nothing rattles. The tray is heavier than it looks. Your arms flex slightly with each step. You keep your gaze lowered, meeting a footman's eyes, while carrying something this precious is just inviting distraction, and distraction is a quick path to disaster. At last, you reach Madam's door. You pause to draw a careful, calming breath. The house still feels hushed at this hour, the kind of hush that holds its breath right alongside you. Then you raise your knuckles and knock gently, 3 precise taps, the code that's become second nature. A faint murmur comes from within. That's your cue. You turn the knob, ease the door open on its silent hinges, and slip inside. The bedroom is now warm and softly glowing from the twin fires you lit earlier. Curtains are still mostly drawn, letting in just enough gray morning to paint everything in a gentle wash. Madam stirs in her bed, lace cap slightly askew, eyes fluttering open as you approach. "Good morning, madam," you say, voice pitched in that low, soothing register that always seems to help ease her from sleep. The weather today looks rather mild, no rain, and only the lightest of fog. London is being charitable for once. A small smile tugs at the corners of her mouth. She pushes herself up against her pillows while you move to the side table, setting down the tray with absolute care. You arrange everything just so, sliding the paper within easy reach, adjusting the teacup handle so it points precisely toward her right hand. Then you lift the teapot and pour, the warm amber stream curling into the cup with a tiny hiss. The scent of bergamot fills the space between you, a small bright perfume that momentarily overtakes even the lingering coal smoke. "Your tea, madam, and a fresh shortbread." You set the cup down on its saucer, place the spoon neatly across. She reaches for it with a pleased little hum, eyes scanning the headlines. Then, as always, you step back to your quiet station by the dressing room door. This is the waiting time, a careful pause in which you become almost part of the furniture. Not quite visible, but certainly not absent, ready in case she wants the curtains drawn fully open, or her slippers fetched, or simply someone to listen to a rambling early morning thought about the guest list for Thursday's dinner. Sometimes she talks to you in these moments, little bits of gossip about who she might visit, or idle complaints about the way certain ladies still wear last season's sleeve shape. Today, she simply sips her tea and rustles the paper. You take this small reprieve to adjust a pair of gloves left on the vanity, aligning them into a neat little fan. From your quiet place by the door, you take in the room, the gentle hiss of the fire, the soft rustle of Madam's satin coverlet, the faint tick of the French clock on the mantel. It's a fragile tableau of wealth and ease, one you've orchestrated since well before the sun came up. At last, Madam sets her cup down and looks over at you with a faint, expectant lift of her brows. You recognize it immediately, the unspoken signal that the morning's real labors are about to begin. Soon you'll be at her side, guiding her from the bed to the dressing chair, ready to start the delicate dance of layers upon layers of garments. But for now, in these fleeting heartbeats before the day surges forward again, you allow yourself a subtle, private triumph, because she's content, warm, tea in hand, safely cushioned against any harshness the world might offer. And it's you, in your plain uniform and sensible shoes, who made that possible long before her eyes ever opened. So you offer her a gentle, knowing smile, a silent, "I am ready when you are, madam." And with that, the next chapter of this long, intricate day waits just on the other side of her final sip. Madam gives the faintest incline of her head, a small, regal nod that to anyone else might seem casual, but to you is as clear as any bell. It means, "Come here, we begin." You glide forward, hands already flexing lightly in preparation. By now you could probably perform this ritual half asleep, though you'd never dare let your concentration slip. Dressing Madam is a high-stakes ballet, one that demands careful timing, gentle precision, and an almost eerie knack for reading her mood before she bothers to speak it. First, you draw back the layers of her heavy blankets, revealing the delicate embroidered night rail she slept in. The fire has made the room pleasantly warm now, sparing her the sharp shock of London's chill. You help her sit forward, slipping your hands beneath her hair to gather it aside so the fabric doesn't snag. The intimacy of this gesture never entirely fades. It's as if you're temporarily cradling a part of her very self, her warmth and vulnerability caught there between your careful fingers. Then comes the first garment of the day, the fine cotton chemise, freshly laundered and pressed, with tiny shell buttons that catch the low firelight. You unfold it from your arm and ease it over her head, helping her slip one arm, then the other through the slender sleeves. The cotton is crisp yet whisper light, fluttering down to settle against her skin with a small sigh of fabric. Next are her drawers, what she primly refers to as pantaloons in front of gentlemen, though you've heard her grumble to her sister that the word makes her sound like a circus clown. They're of soft white linen, tied at the waist with narrow tapes. You help her stand, steadying her with one hand under her elbow and guide her legs into them. The tapes draw snug, settling around her slim waist. And then it's your favorite tiny flourish. When she's stable and safe, you give the ends of the tapes the gentlest tug, so they flutter like ribbon dancers before you knot them securely. It's a moment of playful delicacy you allow yourself, a little private ritual that says, "I see the beauty even in these humble underthings." Now she sits again, lifting one dainty foot at your prompting. You slide a silk stocking up her calf, smoothing it carefully to ensure there are no awkward wrinkles that might chafe later. The stocking is cool under your fingers, with a faint shimmer that catches the light. You fasten it at mid-thigh with a narrow garter, today a pale blue, trimmed with tiny rosettes. A touch frivolous for morning wear, but Madam is known to indulge her moods. You secure the other stocking in the same way, fingers deftly working the ribbon into a small, neat bow. All through this, you chat lightly with her, offering gentle little comments that dance somewhere between servant's deference and the conspiratorial confidence of an old friend. "Miss Adair's luncheon is still on for tomorrow, madam?" you ask, smoothing the hem of her chemise. She makes a delicate scoffing sound. If she tries to serve that dreadful aspic again, I may finally expire of boredom. You allow yourself a quiet laugh, careful not to overstep. These moments of humor are a fragile privilege, an invisible line you've learned to walk with the grace of a tightrope artist. When both stockings are tied, you step back to admire your handiwork. Her calves look elegantly shaped, encased in silk that gleams with even the slightest shift of her leg. Already the image of a refined lady is starting to build, layer by careful layer, and you take a private satisfaction in knowing you're the one constructing it from the foundation up. Throughout this process, there's also a gentle undercurrent of assessment in your touch. You notice a tiny bruise at her knee, likely from when she tripped over her little dog in the hallway 3 days ago, and make a mental note to bring that up quietly with the housekeeper, in case Madam needs a discreetly arranged footrest later to ease any tenderness. These tiny observances are never spoken directly to her unless necessary. They're simply part of the unspoken vigilance you maintain, the invisible web of attentions that keeps her days running without friction. As you straighten, your hands find the folds of your own apron and give them a tiny, unconscious pat, a habit that seems to reassure your mind that everything's in its place. And with this first layer of her attire now secure, the true architecture of the morning begins to rise, corsets and petticoats, bustles and gowns, each with their own stories, little triumphs and potential disasters to deftly avoid. But for now, you allow yourself a small secret breath of relief. Because this stage is complete, she's snug in her fine chemise and stockings, standing there already transformed from slumbering figure to something halfway toward the dazzling lady who'll later sweep through drawing rooms with a practiced smile. And only you and the quiet crackle of the nearby hearth are witnesses to just how gently, how intimately that transformation has begun. You reach for today's corset, draped neatly over the back of Madam's dressing chair, a structured masterpiece in ivory brocade, stiffened with whalebone and gleaming here and there with tiny, cunningly sewn lines of delicate stitching. You give it a gentle shake to settle it, then carefully open the front busk, those slim metal fasteners that click together like the world's least cozy hug. Madam gives a soft, anticipatory sigh. Ah, the corset, the ultimate frenemy of the Victorian lady. Gorgeous silhouette? Absolutely. Ability to draw full breath or eat an extra scone? Not a chance. You step close and ease it around her waist, guiding it so the smooth edges settle precisely over her chemise. The faint scent of starch rises, warm, clean, edged with just a whiff of soap. You close the front, metal hooks sliding into place with little snicks, almost like the delicate locking of a treasure chest. "Comfortable so far, madam?" you murmur, even though you both know the real test comes in about 3 seconds. She gives a tiny shrug. As much as ever. Proceed. And so, you move behind her, taking hold of the laces that run down the back like a pale ladder of secrets. You slip 2 fingers under to ensure nothing's twisted, then begin. It's a careful, practiced rhythm, crossing the laces over, pulling, crossing again, a slow, deliberate constriction that brings the panels together, inch by inch. The corset groans slightly as it tightens, an almost living sound. Madam's shoulders lift with a deeper breath, her ribs shifting under your hands. You glance up at the mirror in front of her. She's watching herself with that oddly mixed expression that Victorian women seem to perfect, half vanity, half stoic resignation. Too much? You ask gently, pausing to give her a moment. She shakes her head faintly. A bit tighter. I'm dining with Mrs. Pembroke later, and that woman never lets anyone forget how minute her waist is. I'll not give her the satisfaction. So you resume. pulling the laces in slow, measured tugs that draw her waist even narrower. The fabric molds to her torso, sculpting it into that coveted hourglass, what magazines rhapsodize as the wasp waist, what satirists like to sketch with absurdly tiny middles, barely wider than a teacup. You feel her exhale, short and careful, and you pause again, resting your hand lightly on her back. There's an odd tenderness here, wrapped in the practical necessity. Who else gets this close, literally shaping her form? Who else is trusted to know the fine line between fashionably cinched and dangerously faint? At last, when the laces are drawn just so snug enough that you could almost encircle her waist with two hands if you tried, but still merciful enough to allow shallow breaths, you tie them off in a precise bow. The knot sits flat so it won't poke through her layers. You tuck the ends under with a gentle pat. There we are, you say with a small flourish, stepping to the side so she can admire the effect in the mirror. The corset nips in dramatically below the swell of her bust, flaring out again toward her hips in a curve that countless fashion plates would envy. She turns slightly, testing the give, and lets out a breath that's half a laugh, half a sigh of surrender. Marvelous. I should hire you out to the sculptors on Pall Mall. You'd have them carving Venus herself with these tricks. You grin at that, delighted, despite the hours still ahead. Only if they promise not to pay me in marble dust and scandal. There's a quiet camaraderie in this, something warm that momentarily bridges the vast difference in your worlds. You give the corset one last smoothing stroke along her spine, feeling the sturdy whalebone beneath your fingers, then step back, and that's it. The crucial foundation of the day is now firmly in place, literally supporting everything that will come after. The bustle, the layers of petticoats, the frothy skirts and intricate bodices. Without this secret structure, your carefully measured pulls, your tiny calibrations of tension, none of that splendor would sit right. You tidy the little scraps of lint from her chemise at the shoulders, brush an imaginary speck of dust from the corset's edge, and meet her eyes in the mirror. Ready for the next stage, you ask, voice bright but conspiratorial. Because really, if there were a medal for enduring Victorian underpinnings, Madame might deserve at least a modest silver. She gives a regal nod, lifting her chin. And so you move on, mentally reviewing the next cascade of garments waiting nearby. But inside, there's that tiny glimmer of pride that only you can fully appreciate. Because beneath every grand appearance she'll make today, it's your hands, clever, patient, unsung, that quite literally hold it all together. You move across the soft carpet, your skirts whispering at your ankles, and reach for the first critical tool of your next grand feat, today's bustle pad. It's a clever little contraption, essentially a padded crescent, designed to sit at the back of Madame's waist and exaggerate the drape of her skirts into that coveted waterfall shape. You sometimes think of it like the original Instagram filter, instantly reshaping reality into something far more dramatic and likely far less comfortable. Let's give you today's best walking silhouette, shall we? You tease gently, holding up the bustle pad with a tiny flourish. It's covered in a cheerful rose print cotton, a secret bit of whimsy that no one will see once layers are piled on top. Madame lifts an eyebrow at your comment, but can't quite hide her smirk. You tie it snugly around her waist, knotting the tapes with quick, practiced fingers, so it sits precisely where it needs to. A soft, puffed perch that already promises architectural wonders to come. You double-check it from the side, ensuring it doesn't tilt or slump. No lopsided bustles on your watch. Then come the petticoats. The first is a sturdy, slightly coarse cotton, meant to protect her finer garments from any wear or stray seams of the corset. You help her step in, then tug it up and smooth the waistband flat against her corset, tying it neatly at her back. It swishes faintly when she shifts, and you grin. That's your first rustle of the day sorted, madam. The orchestra has begun. She lets out a short laugh, a small sign that the worst constriction of the corset has been absorbed into her breathing patterns now. Next is the horsehair petticoat, a marvel of Victorian engineering, really. It's scratchy and stiff, woven with actual horsehair to give it bounce and volume. You hold it out for her like a hoop of frothy challenge. Caution, wild animals have been sacrificed in the name of your skirt's glory, you quip under your breath. Madam rolls her eyes at you in the mirror, but her mouth twitches. You guide it over her hips, feeling it settle and bloom outward instantly, creating a kind of bell that stands proudly around her legs. You give it a little test, swish with your hands. Perfect. If she were to turn quickly, it would flutter out like a regal sea anemone, all elegance and hidden structural ambition. Finally comes the topmost petticoat, crafted of finer cotton with dainty lace edging and delicate pine tucks that catch the light in tiny elegant stripes. This is the layer designed not to scratch or snag her prized outer gown. It feels softer under your fingers, whisper light, almost floating as you lift it over her head and down to rest atop the horsehair support. You take your time smoothing it, fingers fanning carefully over the lace, ensuring there are no awkward folds that might print through the final dress. With each layer, you step back, circling her like a little orbiting planet to check the drape from every angle. It's a ritual you both know well, your head tilting, your brow furrowed in concentration, her quiet patience as she stands, arms slightly out, trusting you to shape her into the day's ideal. Lovely, you murmur finally, giving the lace hem a last gentle tug, so it rests evenly. You've officially been transformed from mere mortal to formidable society figure, at least from the waist down. Madam snorts, a sharp little burst of laughter she quickly smothers, and you allow yourself a quick grin in triumph. You'd wager no other dressing maid in the city can get that sound out of her before noon. You stand back, hands resting lightly on your apron, taking in your work. This process, so often reduced to simple images in fashion plates, waist pulled tight, skirts flaring wide, carries with it countless tiny, invisible choices you've made. How tightly to knot each tape, how to distribute the petticoats so they cascade rather than bunch, how to ease everything into place without ever letting her discomfort show. It's a quiet kind of artistry, performed not with canvas and oils, but with laces, tapes, horsehair, and a subtle tender touch. And it's your art, hidden beneath the silks and velvets to come, but utterly essential to the grand illusion she'll carry out into the world. You give Madam a soft little nod, a silent, "There we go," and she inclines her head in regal acknowledgement. The foundational magic is complete. Now she's ready for the true flourish, the gown that will slip over all this structure like icing over an elaborate tiered cake. But inside, there's a private glow in your chest, because long before anyone else admires her sweeping silhouette at the luncheon table or from across the garden path, you are the first to see the secret of how it's all built and to know down to the very last lace tie that it was your hands that shaped it so. You turn to the tall walnut wardrobe that dominates one corner of the room, a majestic beast of a thing, with carved columns and ornate brass keyholes that gleam in the morning light. When you open it, a faint rush of lavender sachets, camphor, and clean linen rises to meet you, wrapping around you like a sigh of quiet luxury. Inside, today's chosen morning gown awaits. It's a graceful confection of pale blue wool, trimmed with delicate white sotache braid, something soft, yet proper for informal callers, or an unannounced visit from Madame's sister, who, let's be honest, has a knack for popping by precisely when your lady is least prepared. You slide it carefully off its padded hanger, supporting the weight of the fabric over your arms so the shoulders don't stretch or crease. You turn back to Madame with a little twinkle. Shall we make you the undisputed queen of understated morning charm? She rolls her eyes at you, but it's affectionate, and steps slightly forward. You guide her arms into the sleeves, lifting the gown high enough so the delicate lace cuffs of her chemise settle just right beneath the narrower sleeve openings. The wool slips down over her petticoats and bustle, finding its natural hang with a graceful swoosh. Now comes the truly fiddly part. You move behind her, eyes narrowing, with playful determination, as you confront a long, almost absurdly dainty row of tiny buttons that runs from her collar all the way to her lower back. Each one is covered in matching blue fabric, each one a potential saboteur of your morning timeline. You know, you murmur as you begin, your fingers deftly hooking each loop over its button. If I had a shilling for every one of these, I'd be off in Brighton by now, running a seaside tea shop. That would be a dreadful waste of your talents, Madame retorts, though her voice is slightly breathless as she adjusts under the gentle pull of the gown settling into place. You chuckle. Maybe. Or maybe I'd be out there scandalizing the local fishermen by running barefoot on the beach. Hard to say. Button by button, you work your way down. It's delicate labor, demanding both care and speed. Too slow, and Madame will grow fidgety. Too fast, and you risk a crooked line that will be glaringly obvious the moment she turns in front of a mirror. Your fingertips dance along the tiny domes, drawing each loop snug and neat, all while the gown molds itself around the structured underlayers you so carefully arranged. At last, the final button slips home. You step back with a quiet exhale. The dress fits beautifully, the skirt cascading over the bustle and petticoats in perfect fluid lines, the bodice clinging just enough to flatter without strangling. You reach in and give the lace at her neckline a subtle tug, arranging it so it fans softly rather than rumples, and adjust the delicate cuffs at her wrists, ensuring the tiny white ruffles peek out evenly on both sides. Then comes the finishing touch. You circle her once, smoothing the fabric lightly with your palms to ensure there are no hidden wrinkles or awkward bunches. It's like tuning a violin, small, precise adjustments that mean everything for the final harmony. Give us a little twirl, Madame, you tease lightly. She obliges with a small, elegant half-turn, and you grin. The gown fans out beautifully behind her, the skirts catching the light in soft ripples. From any angle now, she looks every inch the poised lady of the house, ready to drift through her drawing rooms with a calm dignity that belies the tightly cinched waist and secret scaffold of petticoats underneath. Standing back, you take in the sight, feeling a private sort of triumph spark low in your chest. Here she is, gently glowing in morning light, utterly serene, thanks in no small part to your steady hands and countless quiet decisions. And though the world outside this room will only see the effortless result, you alone know each tiny triumph that got her here, each button fastened without a slip, each layer laid down like a painter's stroke on a canvas. With a subtle nod that passes between you, her satisfied glance in the mirror, your slight curtsy of completion, the moment is sealed. The morning ensemble is finished. Time now to ready her chair at the dressing table for hair and powder, and to let this beautiful first act slip gracefully into the next. You guide Madame over to her dressing table, one careful hand at her elbow, even though she hardly needs the support. It's more ritual than necessity, a graceful courtesy that underlines your shared performance of refinement. The dressing table itself is an ornate marvel, polished rosewood topped with a marble slab, gleaming under the gentle glow of the fire and catching glints from crystal scent bottles and tiny gold-capped jars. A large triptych mirror dominates the scene, each angled side ready to reflect back every angle of Madame's carefully curated elegance. She settles onto the padded chair with a faint sigh, part relief from standing so long under the weight of all those layers, part contentment in sinking into the next phase of her morning transformation. You stand just behind her, meeting her eyes briefly in the glass. "Ready for a masterpiece?" you ask, with the playful solemnity of a painter preparing to tackle a portrait. Madame makes an amused little snort, then closes her eyes and tips her chin slightly upward. That's your sign. Proceed, artist at work. You start with her hair. It's long and surprisingly heavy, a glossy chestnut that spills over her shoulders as you gently unpin the loose overnight twists. You pick up the brush, its boar bristles softened by years of use, and draw it slowly from crown to tip. Each stroke releases a faint, warm scent of floral pomade from last night's light dressing. The strands sigh under your hand, smoothing into an obedient ripple. The brushing is almost meditative. You take your time, varying the strokes, sometimes long and gliding, sometimes shorter, little flicks near her nape to coax out any stubborn tangles. The fire snaps gently in the grate. Somewhere beyond the door, the faint clatter of a breakfast tray drifts up from the servant's passage. But here, in this warm little bubble, it's only the rhythmic whisper of hair through bristles and the quiet sound of Madame's breathing. Next comes the curling iron, waiting in its stand by the hearth. You test it lightly against a scrap of tissue. No dangerous sizzle, just the right, gentle heat. Then you take small sections of her hair, wind them carefully around the warm barrel, and count out a slow beat before releasing. A soft curl springs free, each time bobbing slightly before you coax it to rest against her shoulder. You work methodically, building volume and shape, your fingers deftly separating and arranging the curls so they nest together in elegant loops. When you're satisfied, you gather it up in your hands and begin sculpting it into today's chosen style, a loose chignon at the back, with delicate curls left to frame her face and soften the stern line of the corset-bound bodice. Hairpins slip in almost invisibly, each one placed with the precision of a jeweler setting, tiny stones. Madame watches you work in the mirror, occasionally giving you a small nod or closing her eyes again as though savoring the tiny tugs and shifts. "Comfortable still?" you murmur, adjusting a twist to ease tension near her temple. "Perfectly. You've hands that could coax flowers into bloom, I swear," she says lightly, though her voice has that slightly airy edge from the corset. You laugh under your breath, or at least keep your hair from looking like a frightened hedgehog. She gives a small, scandalized laugh at that, and quiets again, letting you finish. When the hairstyle is complete, you turn to the powder. It's a fine rice powder, faintly scented with orris root, that dusts your fingertips like pale silk. You tap it gently over her forehead, nose and chin, softening any shine. It settles into her skin with a subtle matte glow, leaving her complexion delicate and almost ethereal, like a figure out of a watercolored fashion plate. Next, You take up a little square of crimson-dyed paper, rouge paper, as much a Victorian staple as tea or scandal. You press it lightly against her lips, then her cheeks, leaving behind just a whisper of warm color. It brightens her face instantly, makes her eyes look more alert, gives the illusion of effortless, natural vitality, which you both know is one of society's greatest carefully maintained lies. You step back, inspecting her from several angles, then offer her the small hand mirror. She studies her reflection with a practiced, critical eye. There's a tiny, pleased smile that curls her mouth, almost involuntary. Well done. You've made me look like I slept a full 8 hours and haven't a single care in the world. That is precisely the point, you reply, your voice pitched with playful gravity. My services include illusions of moral superiority, youthful bloom, and absolute composure, all very reasonably priced by the hour, of course. She lets out another quiet laugh, the sound warm and oddly intimate in this private sanctuary. When she sets down the mirror, you lean in to give her curls a final delicate pat, ensuring everything sits just so. Then you sweep a stray hair off her shoulder, straighten the lace at her neckline one last time, and step back with your hands folded lightly before you. The transformation is complete. Here she sits, elegant, serene, her face a gentle canvas of health and wealth, her hair coiled into a perfect silhouette that will hold up to polite conversation and quiet afternoon rivalries. And you're the silent magician behind it all, your fingers still tingling faintly from the warmth of her curls, your apron dusted with a ghost of rice powder, your mind already ticking toward the next 1,000 quiet triumphs, waiting beyond this room. As soon as Madame leaves the suite, her skirts sweeping confidently through the door, the faint scent of her floral toilet water lingering in her wake, you let out a small private breath. The room seems to exhale with you, relaxing from its state of high alert. Now it's your time to get to work again, though this part feels a touch different, less like delicate artistry, more like orchestrating a battlefield cleanup. Quiet, quick, thorough, so no trace of the morning's beautiful chaos remains. You start with the bed. It's still tousled from where Madame sat to sip her tea, and then rose to begin the long process of dressing. You fold back the covers, plump the down pillows with a sharp practiced thump that sends little puffs of air and faint hints of lavender into your face. Then you smooth everything back into flawless order. The embroidered coverlet is pulled tight, its pattern of tiny trailing roses perfectly aligned with the headboard. The lace at the edges drapes evenly, not a single crooked fold. Next, you tackle the washstand. The water in the basin is now cloudy from Madame's morning rinse. You lift it carefully and carry it to the small servant's sink, just off her room. When you tip it out, it splashes with a satisfying finality. Fresh water will be brought up later for the midday hand washing, but for now, you wipe the basin clean with a soft linen cloth, circling around the delicate porcelain rim until it gleams. You arrange the soap dish, carved from pale green marble, back in its exact spot. The little cakes of rose-scented soap look like candies, each resting on its tiny ribbed shelf. Her nail scissors and glass file are lined up in a perfect row, joined by the small ivory-handled brush she uses to flick imaginary lint from her sleeves. Turning then to the dressing table, you survey the aftermath of hair and powder. A few hairpins have strayed like fallen soldiers across the marble top. You scoop them up, placing them in the little gilt box reserved for these bits and bobs. The powder puff rests delicately in its lid. You tap it once to loosen excess dust, then set it precisely where it belongs. Tiny jars and scent bottles are nudged into a careful semicircle, their mirrored reflections doubling the quiet splendor. You dust the surface lightly with a soft cloth, catching the faint traces of rice powder. Each sweep leaves behind a subtle gleam, as if the wood breathes a tiny sigh of relief under your attentions. The mirror panels are checked for smears. Your face flashes briefly in each one, a ghost behind your diligent hands, and then you run your fingertips along the edge to catch any last clinging hairs. Finally, you make a quick circuit of the room itself. Your hands lift and straighten anything slightly amiss. The small lace antimacassar on the arm of her reading chair, the dainty cushion that often slides askew. The little rug by her bedside is adjusted by a mere inch so that its floral border sits parallel to the floorboards. Such a tiny correction, but these things matter to the overall hush of perfection. By the end of it, the suite looks untouched by mortal fuss. The bed is pristine, the air still faintly warm from the earlier fires, every surface waiting in tranquil readiness for Madame's eventual return. If someone were to stroll in now, they'd think this room always stands like this, effortlessly gracious and calm. But you know the truth, of course. You're the hidden hand behind this calm, smoothing wrinkles, wiping traces, setting each tiny stage again and again so the illusion never falters. It's a kind of gentle power that no guest or even Madame herself ever truly sees. The magic of making comfort look eternal, suspended perfectly in time. You pause by the door, taking one last glance. Everything is in its place. The ghost of morning busyness swept away. You adjust your cap, draw a quiet breath of lavender-scented air, and step out, already shifting your thoughts toward the next duty, waiting down the corridor, where another quiet triumph will soon unfold beneath your steady hands. You make your way down the corridor, basket in hand, heading toward the small workroom that serves as the private domain of the ladies' maids, a space tucked discreetly away from the more glamorous parts of the house. It's a narrow chamber, filled with the scents of starch and beeswax, lit by a single tall window that looks out onto nothing more exciting than the neighboring brick wall. But this humble little sanctuary is where the real preservation of Madame's grand appearance happens. The battlefield after the ball, the laboratory after the experiment, the place where you transform yesterday's wreckage back into tomorrow's perfection. You begin by gathering all the clothing Madame wore yesterday, carefully draped over your arms so the delicate fabrics don't crease. There's the afternoon walking gown in a sober moss green wool, the bodice slightly puckered where she perched on the settee for far too long. Then the evening dinner dress, a lush confection of plum silk trimmed with black jet beads that catch the light even in the dull workroom. First order of business, dust. You lay each garment flat on the long wooden table, smoothing them gently with your palms. Then you take up your clothes brush, a soft bristle tool that looks almost like something you'd use on a prize pony, and begin sweeping methodically over the fabric. Little flecks of lint and the faintest traces of London soot disappear under your strokes. You pay special attention to the hemlines, which always seem to pick up half the drawing room carpet no matter how clean the house. Next comes the inspection. You lean close, your eyes narrowing, seeking out tiny betrayals, a faint tea splash on the skirt's front panel, a loose bead hanging by a single rebellious thread. You set aside the brush and pull from your apron pocket a neat roll of needles and silk threads in a rainbow of nearly invisible shades. With quick, careful stitches, you secure the bead, your fingers deft as spiders, whispering along the silk, so lightly it barely dents. For the tea stain, it's out with your small bottle of lemon solution. Dab, blot, dab again, until it fades into nothingness. When these quiet surgeries are complete, you turn your attention to the garments that must be laundered. You separate the underlinen from the more fragile outer pieces, placing the fine cotton chemises and drawers into a shallow wicker basket. These you'll pass off to the laundry maids downstairs, women with raw red hands from the harsh soaps and endless wringing, who nonetheless handle these intimate items with a kind of reverent expertise. As for what stays, you fetch the heavy iron from the small stove kept burning in the corner. You test its heat against a scrap of muslin, then press it gently along the seams and folds of the walking gown. Each pass of the iron releases a faint, sweet scent of warm wool and leftover lavender. You lift the skirt lightly with one hand, chasing out wrinkles that would otherwise shout of negligence to anyone sharp-eyed at the next luncheon. When everything is pressed, brushed, and mended, you hang the gowns on their padded hangers. The fabrics fall into graceful lines once more, all hint of yesterday's creases smoothed away. It's strangely satisfying work, like restoring a painting that's dulled from the day's dust back to its original gleam. Last, you tidy up the workroom itself. A stray thread here, a forgotten pin there, swept up, stowed away. Your needle roll returns to your apron pocket. The iron is set back carefully on its stand. You give the table a quick wipe with a soft cloth, chasing away any lingering powder or lint. With all that done, you pause at the door to glance back. The dresses hang in serene rows now, waiting to be summoned again by Madame's fickle tastes, ready to play their next role in her quiet theater of appearances. And it strikes you, as it often does, that you're more than just a cleaner or a seamstress here. You're a kind of silent historian, preserving every tiny evidence of Madame's days. The faint crease from where she leaned to whisper a secret, the stray thread from where her glove caught on a brooch. With your careful hands, you erase these little traces, but you also bear witness to them, hold them for a moment in the privacy of this small sunlit room. Then, with one last breath of the lavender and wool-scented air, you step out, your next quiet duty already unfurling in your mind as naturally as another breath. You slip back into the servants' wing, the world shifting instantly from hushed velvet halls and delicate lace to the solid, bustling underbelly of the house. Here the floors are plainer, the air sharper with the smell of blacking, boiled potatoes, and coal smoke. Voices rise and fall, some laughing low, others clipped and businesslike, creating a gentle, oddly comforting chorus of shared toil. Your stomach gives a hopeful little flip. Finally, time for your own brief pause. You duck into the servants' hall, which today is bright with sunlight streaming through the tall, mullioned windows. The long wooden table is already half filled with staff, clutching plates and cups. There's a scattering of the kitchen girls at one end, a pair of footmen deep in discussion over the best polish for the front door's brass plate, and near the other end, the under housemaid is muttering about some stain she can't quite lift from the library curtains. You find a space between the scullery maid and a lanky young footman who gives you a tired grin. You nod back, setting down your basket before easing onto the bench. The familiar stretch of your back and shoulders against the straight wood is oddly satisfying, like your bones are quietly sighing in relief. Breakfast for you is nothing grand. A thick slice of bread, a dab of dripping, a small cup of tea that's gone slightly stewed from sitting on the hearth. But after hours of bending, lifting, and fussing over lace, it tastes nearly divine. The bread is still faintly warm, crust crisp under your teeth, and the tea, though strong enough to float a spoon, sends a welcome ripple of warmth through your chest. While you eat, your ears are as busy as your mouth. The servants' hall is a treasure trove of vital intelligence. At the head of the table sits the butler, poised like a silent general, presiding over his troops. In his calm, measured voice, he runs through the household's upcoming needs. Special wines to be brought up from the cellar for a possible dinner party at the end of the week, new coal deliveries expected tomorrow, and a reminder that the footmen will need their livery freshly brushed and their gloves spotless. Then comes the part most crucial to you. The butler shifts his gaze, consulting a slim black ledger. Madam's carriage will be called for 3 o'clock sharp today. She is to visit Lady Elmridge and then drive in the park. I expect her afternoon gown will need to be laid out by 2. Your mind grabs these details instantly, slotting them into your mental puzzle. That means you'll need to be back upstairs early to prepare her afternoon ensemble. Hat, gloves, parasol, shoes, all ready to whisk on without delay. You file it away with a tiny inward nod, already visualizing which of her lighter walking dresses might suit the weather and the social demands of the visit. Beside you, the footman mutters under his breath that the horse is still off his feed, while across the table, one of the kitchen maids frets about running out of almonds for the fancy biscuits Madam sometimes demands on a whim. Even these side murmurs matter. They weave into the complex household dance that ensures no one, least of all Madam, ever feels the hidden gears grinding beneath her pretty orderly world. When you've finished your bread, you lean back for a fleeting moment, hands folded around your teacup. It's these rare pauses that give you a chance to feel almost human again, instead of simply a pair of brisk hands and a calculating mind. The hum of chatter all around you, the scrape of knives on plates, even the creak of the bench as someone shifts, all of it feels strangely comforting, like a chorus of hearts quietly echoing yours. But soon enough, the butler closes his ledger with a soft finality that seems to ripple down the table. Servants begin to rise in gentle waves, smoothing aprons, adjusting cuffs, grabbing baskets and trays. The hush before a new round of bustling purpose. You stand too, setting your empty cup aside, and catch the footman's eye, just long enough to confirm he remembers the carriage will be at the door by 3. He gives you a playful mock salute, and you roll your eyes at him, but the grin that tugs at your mouth is genuine, because under all the rigid etiquette, the carefully drawn lines between ranks and roles, there's this, a shared secret understanding that without each other, without the quiet ballet of cooperation, this entire grand house would crumble faster than stale cake. With your own small moment of rest, now tucked inside you like a warm ember, you gather your basket, straighten your cap, and step back into the swirl of tasks, ready to keep playing your essential hidden part in the ongoing theater of Madam's carefully managed day. The hours slip by in a quiet, steady whirl, each minute filled with tiny, deliberate preparations you hardly notice for their familiarity. When the house clock finally chimes a mellow 2 o'clock, a small shiver of anticipation moves through you. It's time to orchestrate another transformation. Back upstairs in Madam's suite, you open the wardrobe and draw out the afternoon dress you selected earlier. It's a soft dove-gray taffeta with narrow bands of velvet at the cuffs and hem, a subtle but elegant statement that suits a stroll through Hyde Park or calling on titled acquaintances who, let's be honest, love to peer critically at each other's outfits almost as much as they love to gossip. You lay it carefully over the dressing chair, smoothing the fabric with your hands so no wrinkles threaten your hard-earned morning silhouette. Then you set out her matching hat on its stand, a neat confection of straw, trimmed with gray silk ribbon and tiny sprays of silk violets. Beside it, you arrange her pale kid gloves, and a small lace-trimmed parasol, today's shield against both sun and unwanted scrutiny. Madame arrives just moments later, cheeks still slightly flushed from reading correspondence downstairs. You greet her with a soft, conspiratorial smile. Here we go again, the next chapter in the day's parade of appearances. Shall we begin? You murmur, hands already hovering near the delicate buttons running down the back of her morning dress. She gives a little sigh, equal parts weary and wry. Let's all low. I imagine Lady Elmridge will be studying my hems for signs of moths. You chuckle under your breath. Then it's our solemn mission to give her not a single scrap to critique. You deftly begin unfastening her gown, each tiny button sliding loose with a quiet pop. The bodice relaxes under your fingers, the taffeta giving up its polite hold on her frame. Madame steps carefully free of the morning dress, standing in her full complement of corset and petticoats once again. For a fleeting moment, it feels almost like the hush between movements of a symphony, everything poised on a delicate breath. You lift the afternoon gown, guiding it over her head and easing her arms through the fitted sleeves. The fabric slips down with a faint rustle, settling over the stiff horsehair petticoat and bustle you so meticulously arranged hours ago. Instantly, the shape takes form, a graceful slope from her narrow corseted waist out over her hips, cascading into gentle folds that catch the light with each tiny shift. You move behind her and begin the new series of buttons, your fingers nimbly securing each loop. As you work, you keep up a soft patter, half distraction, half genuine conversation, so the tug of the gown tightening around her shoulders doesn't seem so breath-stealing. You know, I rather think this dress has a secret advantage, you say, giving the final button a firm, precise twist. That velvet at the hem will hypnotize anyone watching. They'll forget entirely to critique your figure, or heaven forbid, your conversation. Madame lets out a tiny laugh, a breathless little sparkle that lightens the atmosphere instantly. With the dress secure, you turn your attention to the hat. You settle it just so on her pinned curls, tying the silk ribbons under her chin with a neat little bow that you fluff for added charm. Then the gloves, soft, buttery leather that mold snugly over her hands. You roll them gently up each wrist, smoothing out invisible wrinkles as though you're painting on polish. Finally, the parasol. You hand it to her with a little flourish, the delicate lace canopy folded and ready. She opens it half an inch to test the catch, then nods her approval. When all is arranged, you step back and take her in fully. The graceful lines of the gown, the soft curve of the hat brim over her carefully styled curls, the gentle pop of the tiny violets against the gray. She's every inch the poised Victorian lady, ready to step out into a world that demands appearances be kept flawlessly intact, whether strolling past rows of hawthorn bushes in the park, or navigating the subtle barbs of polite society. She catches your eye in the mirror and lifts her brows. Well, you grin. Lady Elmridge won't stand a chance. Her lips quirk into a wry smile that says you're probably right. And with that, she gives the parasol a light tap against her shoulder. Together, you move to the door, you slipping slightly ahead so you can hold it for her, ensuring not a single ruffle catches or tugs. As you watch her glide down the hall, skirts whispering across the carpet like a gentle promise, you feel that small secret glow again, your private pride, because you know it was your careful hands and clever eyes that made this next chapter of her day's public theater not just possible, but radiant. And even as you turn back into the suite to begin tidying up the small wake of this latest transformation, Your mind is already moving ahead to evening, rehearsing the quiet intricacies of silk gowns, gem-studded combs, and whispered encouragements that will come once twilight settles over this grand old house. As the long afternoon shadows stretch across the hallway carpets, and the house takes on that particular golden hush of early evening, you begin preparing for the grandest ritual of all, Madam's evening attire. This is no ordinary dressing, no quick swap of taffeta for linen. This is a deliberate, luxurious transformation meant to dazzle candlelit dining rooms, to whisper of wealth and refinement in every delicate rustle. Tonight, the household entertains important guests for dinner, and Madame has chosen one of her most breathtaking gowns. You start by fetching it from its place of honor in the large mahogany wardrobe. It doesn't hang there like her simpler day dresses. No, it rests carefully folded in a long muslin dust cover, suspended from a broad hanger to keep the heavy silk from stretching. You ease it out gently, the fabric sighing as it unfolds. It's a masterpiece, rich sapphire blue silk that seems to drink in the lamplight, shot through with tiny embroidered sprigs of silver thread. The bodice is cut daringly low by polite standards, just enough to frame her collarbones in a soft, tempting arc, while the sleeves taper close at the wrist with intricate lace spilling over. But before you can help her into this splendid confection, you need to prepare its supporting cast. You retrieve the more elaborate evening petticoats. Two, in fact, layered together. The first is lined with stiffened muslin to hold shape, while the second is edged with frothy lace that will peek out just so when she moves. These you hang on a special stand nearby, allowing them to fully open and shed any final travel creases. Next, you unlock the small armoire, built specifically for storing the family's finer accessories. Here rests the matching evening corset, a slightly shorter, more delicately boned creation than her daytime stays, meant to mold her waist into a smooth, elegant column without quite so much rigidity. It's covered in pale ivory satin, its edges embroidered with tiny forget-me-nots that seem almost coquettish in their daintiness. You lay everything out in order, petticoats, corset, gown, so when Madame enters, the process can unfold seamlessly, each piece waiting its turn, like actors in a precisely timed play. And soon, there she is, framed in the doorway, her cheeks a touch flushed from the small nap she took after her afternoon outing. You greet her with a soft, reassuring smile, and the two of you share a brief, almost conspiratorial look, because however many times you've performed this ritual together, it's still a quiet thrill to see the transformation take shape. "Shall we stun them all speechless, madam?" you say lightly. "Only if you promise not to let me faint dead away from the lace and excitement," she replies, her eyes sparkling with mischief. You begin by unfastening her afternoon dress, your fingers flying over the buttons, and help her step free of it, leaving her in corset, chemise, and stockings. Then, with deft hands, you guide her into the special evening corset. It embraces her torso like a gentle but insistent whisper, its satin cool and slightly slippery under your palms. You secure the front busk, then move behind her to draw the laces. This corset doesn't demand quite the same iron discipline as her morning stays, but you still tighten it enough to create a delicate hourglass, enough that the bodice of the gown will sit perfectly smooth. You ask softly how she feels, adjusting the tension at the curve of her ribs until she gives a tiny nod of approval. Then come the layered petticoats. You lift each one in turn, fluffing it lightly so it doesn't collapse flat, and ease it over her head. It slides down, settling over her hips and bustle pad in a graceful bell. You smooth the waistbands, tying them snug and low so there's no awkward bunching. A gentle tug here, a subtle adjustment there, and suddenly she's half a foot wider at the skirt, a swaying, rustling promise of grandeur. At last, it's time for the sapphire gown. You hold it up by its delicate shoulders, almost like lifting a living creature, careful not to strain the tiny silver embroideries. She steps carefully into the circle of silk, lifting her skirt slightly so her satin slippers don't snag. You pull the gown up, guiding her arms through the narrow sleeves, and then begin the intricate process of fastening the back. Tiny hooks and eyes hide beneath a subtle line of silver braid, each one a potential trap for impatient fingers. Your hands move quickly, sure from endless practice, until the gown hugs her body in a way that makes the petticoats come alive, pushing the silk outward into those elegant floating arcs every fashionable lady aspires to. You step back, adjusting the lace at her neckline, smoothing the tiny pleats beneath the bust, and giving the sleeves a gentle tug so the lace cuffs fan just right. She turns slightly to inspect herself in the mirror, and you see the faint flush of delight on her face. The gown catches the lamplight, scattering little sparks of silver that wink at you both like private jokes. For a moment, you simply stand together in the warm hush of her suite, breathing in the faint scents of lavender sachets, candle wax, and silk heated by her skin. It feels almost sacred, the calm before the orchestra strikes up downstairs, before polite conversation and sly rivalries in crystal glasses set vibrating under the weight of clever toasts. Then Madame lets out a soft laugh. "Well," she says, voice rich with pleased mischief, "I imagine the poor souls at dinner won't know whether to comment on the roast or on my bodice." You grin. "Then it's a triumph already, madam. And we're only halfway done. Because you know, between the fine gloves, the glittering jewels, and the final checks yet to come, this masterpiece is still a few deft touches away from complete. But in this quiet moment, with her skirts fanning around her and her eyes bright, you allow yourself the deep secret pleasure of knowing exactly how beautifully it's all coming together, thanks to your clever, loving hands. The gown is perfect. Truly, she looks like she just stepped out of a painting, destined to hang in some dusty ancestral hall forever. But she's not complete. Not yet. You both know that no Victorian evening look is finished until the glitter comes out, the sparkle, the quiet message that says, yes, this is silk, and yes, these are pearls, and yes, you may now start forming your compliments in full sentences, please and thank you. You cross the room to the elegant rosewood jewelry cabinet, polished to such a fine sheen that your own reflection follows you across its surface like a ghost. You take a key from your apron pocket, a small, serious thing, the shape of trust, and slide it into the top lock. There's a soft click as it yields, revealing trays of treasure, rows of glinting brooches, dangling earrings in garnet and diamond, neat little boxes of polished coral, strands of pearls, so perfect you sometimes wonder how many oysters gave their all for this level of prestige. Madame steps closer behind you. You don't even need to ask. She already has that look, the tonight I intend to be the most admired woman at the table look. She lifts a finger and gestures toward a set of sapphire drops, the perfect match for the evening gown she's wearing. You nod. Excellent choice. No surprises. She knows her color palette like a general knows her battalion. First, the necklace. You lift it carefully from its velvet cradle, a fine silver chain with a single deep blue sapphire pendant that catches the lamplight like it's hoarding secrets. You step behind her, gently sweeping her curled hair to one side, and fasten the clasp at the nape of her neck. Your fingers work lightly but quickly, a practiced little dance, and then you give the pendant the tiniest nudge so it rests just so against her sternum, a blue comet set in pale skin and ivory silk. Next, the earrings. Her lobes are already prepared. No heavy drops during the day, nothing that would weigh or stretch. You fasten the delicate sapphire teardrops into place, stepping to the side to check their line. Perfect. They dangle just low enough to catch attention when she turns her head, but not so long as to seem showy. That balance is everything. Then, the gloves. You lift the pair she selected earlier. White kid leather, soft as a sigh, extending all the way past the elbow. Opera length, naturally. Anything shorter would be a crime against both fashion and propriety. You ease one glove over her hand, rolling the wrist down slowly, smoothing as you go. It's a snug fit, always is, but once it's on, the transformation is immediate. Her hand becomes a porcelain sculpture, graceful and unreadable. A second glove goes on just as neatly, your hands working in silence now. She flexes her fingers inside the leather, testing the fit. You already know it's perfect. Finally, the pièce de résistance, the fan. It's a thing of beauty. Ebony sticks, silk leaf, painted with soft florals and tiny gilded flourishes. You hold it out to her like a sword before a knight. She accepts it with a gentle nod, turning it once in her hand, testing the hinge with a slight flick. It opens in a soft whoosh of air and elegance, then closes again with the satisfying snick of someone about to devastate a room with a mere glance. And then comes the moment of truth. You guide her to the mirror, standing back as she takes in her full reflection. She turns slowly from side to side, examining the slope of the neckline, the shimmer of the sapphires, the way the gloves cling like a second skin. She flutters the fan once, then rests it against her hip. Her expression is calm, composed, and quietly smug. She knows, you know, everyone will be looking at her tonight. Still, you take one final lap around her, straightening the tiniest curl at her temple, patting a wayward fold in her skirt's train, and flicking an invisible speck of dust from her shoulder. You're adjusting the details no one else will notice, because if they do, you haven't done your job right. Then you stop in front of her, lowering your voice a little. Everything's ready. Would you like one final check, madam? She turns slowly before the mirror, giving you a view from every angle. You both know this isn't just vanity, it's strategy. One twisted necklace, one wrinkle in a glove, and someone at dinner will surely notice, possibly even whisper about it between bites of overcooked partridge. But no, tonight there's nothing out of place. She's a vision, a statement, a walking thunderclap of taste, money, and very well curated restraint. And beneath every stitch, every gem, every calculated frill and flattering line, there's your handiwork, your quiet precision, your instinct for perfection. She glances at you one last time in the mirror, lifting a brow in approval. Excellent as always. You bow your head slightly, just a touch of a smile tugging at the corner of your mouth, and you'll be the talk of the table as always. She turns, skirts sweeping out behind her, fan tapping softly against her gloved fingers. You step forward to open the door as she glides past, and just like that, she's gone, a vision disappearing down the candlelit corridor, ready to make her entrance. You close the door behind her, the soft click sounding like both an ending and an exhale. The suite is suddenly quiet again, still warm with the perfume she left behind, still bright from the oil lamp glow. But now, for the first time all day, empty of presence. And you, standing amid all this carefully orchestrated beauty, allow yourself a single private moment of pride, because it may be her name on the invitations tonight. But it's your magic. They'll be applauding without ever realizing it. With the grand rustle of Madame's skirts fading down the hallway, and the last echoes of polite drawing-room laughter swallowed up by thick curtains and closed doors, you find yourself standing alone in her suite once more. But rest, oh sweet summer child, rest is still a far-off fantasy, because your work doesn't conveniently vanish when Madame floats off to dazzle her dinner guests. In fact, some of your most meticulous, quietly satisfying tasks are just beginning. You start by turning your attention back to the dressing table, where the jewelry boxes sit slightly ajar from your earlier careful selections. It's time to ensure that every precious piece is accounted for and lovingly returned to its nest. First come the sapphire earrings. You remove them from the dainty velvet-lined traveling case you used to carry them down to the entrance hall, turning each under the lamplight. The stones wink back at you with sly little flashes of blue fire, like they're sharing a private joke. You check the clasps, still snug, still true, before tucking them neatly back into their slots. Then the necklace, its chain cool and whisper smooth in your fingers. You coil it carefully, laying it atop its matching sapphire earrings. Last comes the evening fan, placed back in its slim painted case. You give it a gentle pat, as though thanking it for performing its delicate duty so well. With each item returned, you lock the jewelry cabinet once more, slipping the small brass key back into the hidden pocket sewn inside your apron, because a dressing maid is not just an artist and confidante, but also a vigilant little banker for her mistress's portable wealth. Next, you turn your attention to the garments Madame left behind. Her afternoon ensemble, now draped over the back of a chair, the dove gray taffeta gown, the softer day corset, the matching hat perched at a slightly saucy angle on the dressing table, as if it decided to wink at you on its own. You lift the gown first, giving it a quick shake to loosen any clinging dust. Then with a gentle but thorough hand, you brush the skirt and bodice, hunting for any tiny stray crumbs or smudges. Finding none, thank goodness, you fold it over your arm with expert precision, careful to keep the pleats aligned so they'll hold their shape overnight. This gown will go on a padded hanger in Madame's smaller wardrobe, set aside for airing and reshaping before it might be pressed again tomorrow. You give the corset a quick inspection too, checking the laces and tiny eyelets for any signs of strain, all intact. Your small sigh of relief is nearly soundless. By the time you've finished fussing over the ensemble, the suite is beginning to slip from its grand evening glow back into something more intimate. The fires are burning lower, sending lazy curls of smoke up the chimney. You take advantage of this hush to make small rounds, closing the wardrobe doors softly, straightening the lace cover on the washstand, smoothing the slight indentation Madame left in her chair cushion. All the while, part of your mind is already running ahead to tomorrow. What gown might Madame choose for her morning calls? Will she want the peacock feathered hat, or prefer the simple straw with velvet ribbon? Does the weather threaten drizzle, meaning boots instead of dainty kid slippers? You make mental checklists that would put any military quartermaster to shame. But tonight's duties aren't done just because your mind is busy forecasting. There's also tomorrow's jewelry to prepare, and that means a bit of polishing. You bring out a soft cloth and gently rub down the clasp on a pearl choker she's likely to wear at luncheon, buffing it until it shines with a faint, almost bashful luster. The repetition is soothing, small circular motions, a subtle warmth growing under your fingertips. It's one of the few moments in your day that almost feels like it's just yours. Then, just as you place the pearls back in their box, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the side mirror. Hair neatly pinned, cap still straight, face a little pink from leaning over gowns and fires all day. You can't help but grin at your own reflection, because behind all the dazzle of Madame's flawless public image is you, plain as bread but quietly indispensable. And so, with a small nod to yourself, you turn down the lamp on the dressing table, drawing the suite into a softer glow. Outside these walls, there's laughter, the clink of crystal, and the hum of dinner conversation that might dance long past midnight. But in here, there is a gentle promise, everything ready, everything waiting, perfectly poised for Madame's return. Tomorrow, this dance will begin all over again. But tonight, for these few quiet moments before she sweeps back through the door, full of stories and gossip and leftover perfume, it's simply you, your careful hands, and the delicate private world you keep running, like an invisible clockwork always precisely on time. You stand perfectly still for a breath, ears tuned like a hound's to the faintest sounds from beyond Madame's suite. Somewhere far off in the house, there's the muffled scrape of a carriage wheel against gravel. Your pulse gives a tiny skip. There it is. She's returned. The anticipation hits you like a small, polite storm. Because even after all these hours of orchestrating her perfect departures, there's something curiously tender, almost intimate, about being the one who guides her back from the world stage into the gentle hush of her private sanctuary. You move swiftly to the doorway, smoothing your apron, setting your shoulders, just in time, because here she comes, her evening gown billowing slightly as she sweeps in, cheeks pink from laughter, or perhaps the brisk night air. The sparkle in her eyes tells you the dinner went well, full of bright conversation, small intrigues, subtle triumphs over rival ladies in slightly less inspired gowns. "Good evening, madam," you say softly, dipping into a small curtsy. It's ritual, but also a welcome home. She gives a little breathless laugh. "Good evening indeed. Let's get out of all this grandeur before I collapse on the carpet and disgrace myself entirely." You close the door behind her with a gentle click that seals the suite off from the rest of the house's echoing mirth. Just you and Madame now, the night your private theater. You start by easing her across to the dressing chair, unpinning her hat first. It's feathered, a rather cheeky little display that undoubtedly caused at least one dinner guest to raise a jealous eyebrow. You set it aside on its stand. Then you move to her jewelry, the serious business. She tips her head, exposing her throat with a trust so casual it still surprises you some days. You lift your hands to the sapphire necklace, finding the tiny clasp at the nape of her neck, and undo it with the same delicacy as if it were spun sugar. The pendant rests in your palm, cool from the evening air, a quiet trophy of how splendidly the night went. Next, her earrings. They come free with a deft little twist. You lay them on the velvet pad on the dressing table, where they wink sleepily in the lamplight. At last, the gloves. You carefully peel them from her arms, rolling the soft white leather down inch by inch. Each little tug seems to release a sigh of relief from her ribcage, as though the evening's elaborate performance has been quite literally bound up inside these accessories. Then it's on to the gown itself. You move behind her, finding the first tiny hook at the top of her bodice. Each fastening you undo loosens something invisible too. The cultivated posture, the polite tension of polite society, the careful arrangement of shoulders and spine meant to keep everything in its correct place. You work slowly down the line of closures until the gown gives a soft, luxurious sigh and slackens around her frame. "Breathe, madam," you whisper lightly, and she lets out a tiny half-laugh that is also half-groan of sheer relief. You help her step out of the dress, holding it aloft so it doesn't drag across the rug. Once she's left in only her corset and chemise, she gives you a playful, conspiratorial look. "The best part of the day," she says, voice husky from dinner wine and tight lacing. "And now for the star moment." Freeing her from the corset, you slip behind her once again, fingers finding the knots and carefully loosening the laces. Inch by blessed inch, her rib cage expands. She inhales deeply for what seems like the first real breath since before dinner, eyes fluttering shut in sheer bliss. "Feels like being reborn, doesn't it?" you say with a tiny smirk. She gives a soft, almost sleepy laugh. "Indeed, I should commission you to just stand behind me all day, untying this wretched thing every half hour." Finally, the corset slips away. Her whole torso seems to relax, her posture melting from elegant rigidity to the quiet slouch of a woman allowed, at last, to be simply human. Then you help her through the gentle ritual of removing the last traces of the evening. You take a soft cloth and wipe away the faint powder and rouge, leaving only her natural skin glowing in the warm lamplight. You brush out her hair, long strokes that whisper through the room like a lullaby. Each pass of the brush uncoils another little knot of the day's demands, leaving her sighing under your gentle hands. At last, you guide her into her nightrobe, a simple but finely made garment of soft lawn trimmed with delicate embroidery. Nothing grand, but that's the point. This is her truest comfort, a whisper of cloth after all the armor of satin and whalebone. You tie the sash for her, step back, and see her shoulders soften. There it is. The day's performance is over. The final act has drawn to a gentle, exhausted close. She catches your eye in the mirror, a small, content smile curving her mouth. "Thank you. Truly, I couldn't survive these endless dinners without you." Your heart gives a warm little pinch, because for all the gowns and laces and jewels, it's these quiet words in the hush of night that remind you why you keep perfecting your art. You dip your head, returning her smile with one of your own. "Rest well, madam." And with that, you start clearing away the final traces of grandeur while she slips under her bed covers, your hands already busy, ensuring that tomorrow's quiet miracles will be ready, waiting for their next sunrise debut. The last soft lamp still burns on Madam's bedside table, casting a golden pool that reaches only so far before giving itself up to the quiet dark. The gentle hush of the house at this hour is so complete it feels almost sacred, a kind of velvet stillness that wraps around you the moment you step away from her bedside. Madam is already sinking into her pillows, her breathing deepening as she settles into the gentle folds of her down coverlet. You give the room one final practiced survey. Her gown from the evening, rich blue silk now thoroughly undone, hangs on a broad padded hanger, aired just enough to keep it fresh. The delicate lace trim is arranged carefully, so it doesn't crumple, each pleat smoothed lovingly under your hands. Her corset rests on a small side stand, loose, quiet, utterly defeated after a long day of conquest. You move through the suite almost on tiptoe, gathering stray hairpins from the vanity, straightening the lace doily on the washstand. The fire is low now, more a hush of ruby embers than dancing flame, but still giving off a tender warmth that makes the air sigh around you. You slip into the adjoining dressing room to make sure everything is poised for tomorrow's beginning. The small ewer on the washstand is emptied, set upside down on its matching basin. A fresh cake of rose soap rests in its little dish, brand new, as if the entire house is conspiring to greet Madam with untouched luxury come morning. The soft brush you used on her hair is cleaned and set precisely on a folded towel, waiting. Satisfied at last, you drift back into her bedroom to turn down the final lamp. The glow contracts, then fades, leaving only the dim outlines of fine furniture and the faint shimmer of moonlight brushing across the carpet. Madam sighs again in her sleep, curling slightly, utterly at peace, and it strikes you gently with a kind of private wonder that for all the grand salons and chandeliers and pearl-studded company, it's here, in this small, hushed room, where she truly belongs. With everything settled, you finally step out, closing the door with a careful hand. The latch clicks as delicately as a closing whisper. You walk back along the corridor, skirts brushing lightly against your ankles, your body feeling strangely weightless now that the day's obligations are fully spent. And then, at last, the climb. The familiar narrow servant stairs are waiting, each step creaking underfoot in greeting. You ascend slowly, muscles warm, mind humming with the gentle echo of all the hours that brought you here. At the top, your tiny attic room is just as you left it. A small bed, a wooden chair, a folded apron set neatly on the chest. The air is cooler up here, touched by a faint drift of London's summer night. You sit on your bed for a moment, untying your shoes, your hands moving in slow, thoughtful patterns. Then you lie back at last, stretching out along the thin mattress, the straw beneath rustling a little as it shifts to cradle your tired shape. And there it is, that deep, almost luxurious pull at your ribs that says sleep is near. Your eyes close, your breathing evens, and your thoughts drift lazily through half-formed pictures. The swirl of silk skirts, the quiet crackle of fires, the gentle laughter over candlelight, all slowly dissolving into a warm, dark softness. So here you are now, in this tender twilight between stories and dreams, feeling each breath slip a little slower, a little deeper than the one before. Maybe you can still sense the faint scent of lavender on the sheets, or hear the phantom echo of distant laughter that has long since faded. Let it all drift by like little paper boats on a quiet stream. Allow yourself this rare hush. Let your body sink into the mattress, each limb growing heavier and easier, as though gravity itself is singing you to sleep. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the tiny flutter at the top of each breath, then the long, slow exhale. In your mind, imagine the old house settling for the night, all its creaks and sighs, like a lullaby meant only for you. You've done enough, more than enough. Now there is only this soft dark, this peaceful wait, this lovely promise of rest. Take one more slow breath in, and then let it out, sinking deeper. You're already drifting, dear friend, already halfway to dreams. Let go. Let it all slip gently out of your hands, and simply rest.